Today we're going to look at Creighton versus Marquette. We're going to discuss how Marquette essentially adjusted what I believe allowed them to win the game. We're going to be looking at it through Marquette's perspective to begin with, then we're going to touch on Creighton's perspective and discuss how their styles led to the result that came about. Let's go. The first thing we need to discuss is how Creighton played certain players on Marquette. So the player we're looking at right here is number 4 and then also number 13. We can see first off giving him a lot of respect on the perimeter, or not worried about him shooting on the perimeter. What does this lead to? This leads to when Tyler Kolek, or for that matter any guard, drives, they face a lot of help early and often because their Creighton's perspective is we're going to let 4 shoot, we're going to let 13 shoot, we don't care. And in this situation it causes a travel by Kolek just because he faces 2 defenders at the free throw line. A similar situation this time in transition. Boom. Why is there so much congestion inside the paint as soon as he gets down there? So he's driving here. This defender, where did he come from? Number 4. Not even remotely guarding him in transition, just going down, and he's the one that causes that errant pass to 13. If he is not here, this is a dunk. But because the way Creighton's playing number 4, they're allowed to sag off, and that creates the turnover. And then, not only was it just for number 4, it also applied to number 22. This defender right here is quote-unquote guarding 22. Look at that closeout. He does not care about him as a shooter. He is protecting the paint. He is saying, I'm going to sag off. You can shoot that shot if you want to. We're going to allow it. This is why in the first half, if you notice, Marquette got very few shots at the rim, because Creighton could literally put 3 players in the paint every single time. They were okay with this shot happening. I think this is a big reason why Marquette had this lead. Number 5 here, I think, is absolutely hilarious. His first thought is, oh crap, shooter, I gotta close out. And then he's like, oh no, wait, I don't need to close out to him, and turns around and runs to box somebody out. Like, this is like the utmost disrespect that you can show a shooter on the perimeter. So then the question is, what did Marquette do to address this? And I think there's 2 things they did to address it. The first and foremost is, obviously Marquette is having a very difficult time scoring in the first half with those 2 lineups. So what they did is they changed the 5 that were out there and made it so if 13 was out there, you had 4 guards, 1, 2, 3, 4, that are all capable shooters. And what does this mean? This means that the defender essentially has to guard them with more respect, which means that it's harder for them to help. So 23 can't help as aggressively, this dude can't help as aggressively, this dude can't help as aggressively, which means Marquette is able to drive and get to the rim better. And we should feel pretty confident that Marquette is the better just flat athlete, so if you give them one-on-one in space, that's probably a matchup that you want if you're Marquette. And so even this, as he goes in, there's no help coming, and you never saw that in the first 15 minutes of the game. Similar concept. We still got all shooters in the game. I think Creighton actually went to a little bit of a zone, but it still has the same impact here. So as this drive happens, you're worried about 23, worried about 1, worried about 2, and so Kolek has so much more room to operate. Instead of having a congested paint, it's more open, and that allows to make the shot. So one thing that I think is crucial and frankly super interesting here is that Shaka Smart essentially said, yeah, we recognize that's going to happen. We're still going to play those players in the second half. And you know what? I just trust you to make the shot. So this is super interesting and frankly shows a lot of faith in his players that they're going to shoot this ball at a 30+% clip despite not having shot it that way for the rest of the season. So this begs the ultimate question is, other teams are going to do this. Like, they are going to sag off of these shooters, and they're going to do it just as aggressively as Creighton did. Is Shaka Smart always going to trust his players to make these shots when the game is on the line? Because if it's a close game and they're missing these shots, this is a game that you're going to lose. So the 2 players we are talking about are Sean Jones and Stevie Mitchell. So first for Stevie Mitchell, we can see this year on his highest volume that he shot so far, he's shooting 18%. 18% is scary low. That's dangerous to put that shot in your hands at the final buzzer. And the other player is Sean Jones. Same thing, way more volume than he's shot in the past, and 21%. Again, I'm very curious to see how Shaka Smart chooses to handle this in the future, because that's a dangerous predicament to be relying on that shot down 4 towards the end of the game. Then we switch to Creighton's perspective. So for Creighton's perspective, their whole offense is designed to punish you when you help. Okay? They are laden with great shooters around the perimeter. They're always in the correct position. They're always spaced out really well. And if you help them, they're going to try and hit a 3 over the top of you. And for about the first 10 minutes of this game, they did this really, really well. Okay? So they would force a little bit of help. Marquette, as a defense, they love to help and rotate, and I talked about this in one of the past videos, is sometimes that can get them in trouble. We see help come down. 55 is not a 20% shooter. He's like a 45% shooter. He's lights out. So given that this is the biggest threat for Creighton, how does Marquette address this? And we see, boom, help, kick out, open 3. So then Marquette's simple slide adjustment is just simply, essentially the message is just to trust your individual defenders. Hey, you don't need to help, be a little bit more controlled and get up in their grill, causing essentially chaos. Marquette is undoubtedly the better athletes, so get up on them, trust yourself, pressure them, force them to make difficult decisions with the ball handling because you are so much quicker, and it forces very difficult shots. As we can see, the shot clock's down at 1. So while Marquette has great rotations, and I love their help side defense, if you don't need to even use it, then don't use it. Be aggressive, trust yourself as athletes to go get the ball. And frankly, Creighton didn't really have a good response to this because I just think their point guards aren't super used to players like Marquette being on the other side of them. I had to limit this because there were so many. If we just rewatch the full second half, you'd see so many situations where there were real borderline shot clock violations on consistent possessions. And so that begs the question for Creighton, what can they do to alleviate a little bit of this pressure on the guards? Because they struggled with it a lot against Marquette, and they're going to face it again for sure. Although Marquette might be one of the best one-on-one defensive teams. So in conclusion, Marquette's overarching theme was they had to essentially trust they're not great shooters, and then also make it so you had situations where the not great shooters weren't on the floor, so you had more space to operate, and that's what allowed them to come back in this game. And on the other side, Creighton needs to essentially find a way to allow them to force help, so they have to be able to get to the rim on their own, and then that can allow their shooters to be wide open on the perimeter, but they got to have somebody that can essentially penetrate the defense without them. So both very large overarching questions that I think are brought up in this game. Both teams I think are very good, and I look forward to seeing what they bring in the future. If you enjoyed this, feel free to like and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.